Have y'all ever just laid in a bed and just be stuck? Like just thinking and thinking some more. And your thoughts all over the place because you got so much going on that you can't even have a solid fucking thought about one thing. And then be worried, have all this on your plate and then be going through the worst breakup. So now you have to take on all of the responsibilities. You got to handle everything on your plate. And then you still got to be nice to the person that hurt you.
On August 20th, 2023, police entered a house in Denton County, Texas, to discover 30-year-old Stephanie Dominique Ingram dead from gunshot wounds, and beside her, 32-year-old Anthony Jontrell Thornton, who had apparently turned the gun on himself. An infant, unharmed, was in the home. What unfolded was labeled a murder-suicide, but almost no motive was publicly stated. The front door had been left slightly open. Authorities called it an isolated domestic incident, with no threat to the wider community. Yet, the limited facts raise crucial questions. Who was Stephanie? What pressures and hidden dynamics existed between two people so close? And why did the situation spiral into fatal violence in a split second? Her death remains a sharp reminder of how private grief often masks complex, systemic dangers. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments. Where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin.
It just really baffles me. It's like black women alone carry enough on their shoulders. And then we gotta carry it all the time by ourselves. All the time by ourselves. I'm so over this. I'm so over it, like, for real.
Stephanie Dominique Ingram was 30 years old at the time of her death and resided in Denton County, Texas. Public records indicate that she had a low public profile, and there is minimal media coverage concerning her personal or professional life. This limited footprint presents challenges for constructing a full biography or understanding her day-to-day experiences. Available information identifies her primarily as a mother, a partner, and a community member, though few details about her work, education, or social involvement are available. Neighbor recollections are sparse, reflecting a private individual who maintained a low profile in her community. As a mother, Stephanie had responsibilities that extended beyond herself. The presence of an infant at the scene highlights both her parental role and the broader consequences of the incident. She was also in a domestic partnership with Anthony Thornton, living in the same home where the murder-suicide occurred. Stephanie's known relationship was with Anthony Jontrell Thornton, 32. Publicly available information about the duration of their relationship is limited, as are details about their interactions in the community. Media coverage does not indicate that neighbors or acquaintances observed ongoing conflict, though it is often difficult to detect private domestic tensions from the outside. The couple had an infant, who was present at the time of the incident. The child's survival emphasizes the stakes within the household and the potential implications for Thornton's decision-making, as well as for child welfare agencies post-incident. There are no publicly reported law enforcement interventions in the relationship prior to the incident. The absence of documented prior police reports or restraining orders does not rule out the possibility of underlying tension or conflict. Domestic disputes often escalate without ever appearing in official records, and private or unreported disagreements could have contributed to the circumstances leading to Stephanie's death. Social media activity for Stephanie and Thornton is minimal or unavailable, providing limited insight into their relationship dynamics, social interactions, or public expression of conflict. This lack of digital footprint contributes to the mystery surrounding the case and the challenge of determining precursors to the fatal event. Stephanie and Thornton resided in Denton County, Texas, a suburban community with both residential and commercial areas. Information about the couple's economic status, employment, or financial pressures is not publicly documented. However, socioeconomic factors such as financial strain, relationship stress, and isolation are commonly observed stressors in domestic homicide-suicide cases. Friends and acquaintances reportedly had limited insight into the couple's private life. Public interviews or statements are scarce, which contributes to the lack of clarity regarding the dynamics between Stephanie and Thornton. The community appears to have been unaware of escalating risk factors, consistent with patterns in domestic incidents where warning signs are often private or subtle. Anthony Jontrell Thornton was 32 years old and resided in the same home as Stephanie Dominique Ingram. Public records regarding his employment, criminal history, or education are limited. There are no documented prior arrests, charges, or convictions available in mainstream news sources or public databases, which leaves gaps in understanding his background and potential risk factors. Homicide-suicides, particularly those involving male intimate partners, often follow observable patterns. Research and statistics indicate that the majority of intimate partner homicide-suicides involve men killing their female partners before taking their own lives. Factors frequently associated with such incidents include jealousy, attempts to exert control, mental health struggles, and stress within the relationship. While the motive in this case remains officially unreported, these general patterns can be instructive in examining potential influences on Thornton's behavior. Studies from the Texas Council on Family Violence indicate that domestic violence is frequently underreported, and that lethal outcomes often occur without prior law enforcement intervention. This aligns with the absence of prior documented conflict between Thornton and Stephanie in public records. Limited evidence about the couple's relationship exists in public sources. Observed public behavior appears ordinary, with no reports of visible tension or conflict. However, intimate partner violence is often private, with signs that are difficult to detect externally. The presence of an infant adds a layer of complexity. Children in households experiencing domestic stress can influence both the perpetrators' and victims' behaviors. In some homicide-suicide cases, the perpetrator may perceive stress from childcare as an exacerbating factor, though it does not excuse violent actions. Warning signs, if present, were not detected or documented by family, friends, or neighbors. The absence of intervention aligns with broader trends in domestic violence, where the private nature of conflict and lack of public awareness contribute to the escalation of lethal incidents. Gender and relationship dynamics. Male partners are statistically more likely to commit homicide-suicides against female partners. Escalation without prior intervention. Many lethal incidents occur without prior police reports, restraining orders, or documented domestic disputes. Stressors, financial pressures, social isolation, relationship conflict, and mental health struggles are commonly identified risk factors. Child presence. Children in the home may increase stress, but survival of children is also commonly documented in homicide-suicide cases. The Stephanie Dominique Ingram case is consistent with these observed patterns. A male partner committed homicide-suicide in a domestic setting, leaving behind a child who survived. Publicly available evidence does not provide specific motivation, prior warnings, or intervention history, which makes the case representative of the difficulties in preventing private domestic tragedies. Stephanie Dominique Ingram's death is documented as the result of a murder-suicide carried out by Anthony Jontrell Thornton. Publicly available information is limited, providing little clarity on specific motives or prior warning signs. The presence of their infant underscores the immediate and future impact of the incident. The lack of social media footprints, prior law enforcement involvement, or public documentation highlights a common characteristic in domestic homicide-suicides. The events often unfold with minimal external awareness. While motive and precursors remain unknown, general patterns suggest that underlying relationship stress, potential mental health issues, and typical dynamics observed in similar cases may have contributed. The case serves as an example of the challenges in identifying and intervening in private domestic conflicts, emphasizing the broader need for awareness, preventive measures, and systemic support for individuals at risk of intimate partner violence. Stephanie Dominique Ingram's story, though lacking extensive public documentation, reflects these patterns and underscores the unseen risk factors that can escalate to lethal outcomes. On August 20, 2023, Denton County law enforcement responded to a call reporting an active shooting at a residential address in Aubrey, Texas. While the exact timeline of the preceding hours and days remains incomplete, available reports establish that 30-year-old Stephanie Dominique Ingram and her 32-year-old partner, Anthony Jontrell Thornton, were both present in the residence along with an infant. Public records provide minimal insight into the lead-up to the incident. There are no confirmed reports of prior domestic disturbances, 911 calls, or restraining orders filed by either party. Given the nature of murder-suicides in intimate relationships, it is plausible that escalating conflict occurred prior to the incident, as patterns in similar cases often involve periods of tension, behavioral changes, or stressors. However, specific details regarding Stephanie and Thornton's interactions or conflicts in the days and weeks leading up to August 20th are unreported. This lack of documentation reflects a common gap in domestic incident reporting, where private events leave questions that are difficult to resolve post-incident. When first responders arrived, the front door to the residence was found ajar. The positioning of the door suggests familiarity between the residents rather than signs of forced entry, consistent with domestic occupancy. Upon entry, officers discovered Stephanie deceased from gunshot wounds to the head and neck, and Anthony deceased from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The infant, present in the residence, remained unharmed and was located in proximity to the victims, though specific positioning relative to the bodies has not been publicly detailed. The child's survival introduces considerations regarding Thornton's intent, indicating that the fatal act was directed specifically toward Stephanie and himself rather than involving the infant. The body's positioning allows limited reconstruction of events. While precise sequencing cannot be confirmed without full forensic documentation, the spatial arrangement suggests that Stephanie was likely shot first, followed by Anthony's self-inflicted injury. Publicly available sources do not include ballistic reports, autopsy details beyond cause of death, or photographs of the crime scene, creating an investigative gap. Evidence collection procedures, standard in homicide cases, likely included securing firearms, documenting body positions, photographing the scene, and collecting trace evidence. However, such information has not been released in detail to the public. Police characterized the case as a murder-suicide shortly after arriving. First responder accounts indicate that officers entered the residence without reported resistance. There are no publicly available witness statements beyond official police confirmation of the scene. The response time, while not explicitly detailed, appears consistent with standard Denton County emergency dispatch procedures. No motive has been publicly disclosed. Investigators did not release evidence of threats, written communications, or other behavioral indicators that could explain the sequence of events. The lack of comprehensive public reporting highlights a limitation in transparency that is often present in intimate partner homicide-suicides, where the immediate resolution by law enforcement leaves investigative documentation largely inaccessible. Local news outlets, including the Star-Telegram, AOL News, and Crime Solver Central, reported the incident with limited detail. Coverage generally confirmed the identities of the victims, the murder-suicide classification, and the presence of the infant. Gun memorial entries provide supplemental documentation, recording Stephanie's death, age, and date of the incident. Discrepancies exist in the available accounts due to minimal data released by law enforcement. Key details, including the precise timing of events, forensic analysis results, and behavioral history of the victims, remain unreported. Social media investigation provides additional context but is limited. Neither Stephanie nor Thornton had extensive publicly visible social media activity that could provide insight into relationship dynamics or potential stressors. With no confirmed motive, several hypotheses can be considered based on patterns in homicide-suicide cases, while acknowledging the speculative nature of such discussion. Potential factors in similar cases include relationship conflict, mental health challenges, financial or employment stress, and personal behavioral triggers. However, no evidence has been released confirming the presence of these factors in this case. The presence of the infant raises ethical, psychological, and legal considerations. That the child was unharmed suggests targeted intent toward Stephanie and Anthony alone. This outcome aligns with statistical data in domestic homicide-suicide cases, where perpetrators often isolate intended victims while leaving children or other individuals unharmed. Community response was limited in public records. Neighbors and family members did not provide widely reported statements, leaving gaps in understanding interpersonal dynamics or potential warning signs. The absence of documented prior abuse or threats further limits reconstruction of possible motives. Homicide-suicide in intimate partnerships is statistically concentrated in cases involving male perpetrators. Texas Council on Family Violence data indicate that firearms are commonly used in these incidents, consistent with Anthony Thornton's use of a gun. Nationally and within Texas, homicide-suicides frequently occur without prior public documentation of domestic violence, illustrating systemic gaps in prevention and reporting. The case reflects patterns where intimate partner fatalities occur suddenly, leaving law enforcement and investigators with limited behavioral history or motive to analyze. Domestic violence intervention systems rely heavily on prior reporting. In the absence of complaints, prior 911 calls, or visible behavioral indicators, opportunities for intervention are restricted. The use of firearms exacerbates the lethality of these incidents. In Texas, firearm access is a significant factor in intimate partner fatalities, aligning with observed outcomes in this case. Analysis of homicide-suicide patterns indicates that prompt intervention, reporting of behavioral red flags, and community awareness are key mechanisms for prevention, though such mechanisms may fail when incidents develop in private residences without documented warning signs. The incident on August 20, 2023, in Denton County illustrates multiple characteristics typical of domestic homicide-suicides. Available evidence confirms the deaths of Stephanie Dominique Ingram and Anthony Jontrell Thornton by gunshot, with the survival of an infant in the household. Public records and media reporting provide only limited context regarding motive, prior conflict, or behavioral indicators. The gaps in documentation, forensic reporting, and public information highlight systemic challenges in understanding domestic homicide-suicides. While statistical and pattern-based analysis can suggest potential contributing factors, definitive conclusions regarding motive remain unavailable. This underscores the difficulty of fully reconstructing private domestic tragedies post-incident and the importance of comprehensive data collection for prevention and awareness. Following the events of August 20, 2023, the community of Denton County, Texas, was confronted with the reality of an intimate partner homicide-suicide that claimed the life of Stephanie Dominique Ingram, 30, and her partner, Anthony Jontrell Thornton, 32. The immediate aftermath was marked by efforts to process both the tragedy and its implications. Local memorials were organized, including entries on the Gun Memorial website, documenting Stephanie's life and death. Neighbors and acquaintances noted the shock and disruption the incident caused, emphasizing the suddenness and unexpected nature of the event. Family members faced the dual challenge of mourning Stephanie while ensuring the safety and stability of the surviving infant. The child's presence in the home at the time of the killings added complexity to the family's grieving process. Authorities and social services were involved to place the infant in a safe environment, highlighting systemic procedures for protecting surviving minors in domestic violence-related deaths. Local organizations and community groups have since emphasized support for children who survive such violent incidents, often involving counseling, legal guardianship assistance, and long-term monitoring to prevent further trauma. The case brought awareness within the community about domestic violence and homicide-suicides. Neighbors reported increased attention to warning signs in their own families and among acquaintances, though no public record suggests prior intervention was requested or undertaken. The suddenness of the event underscored how quickly domestic disputes can escalate to lethal outcomes. Stephanie Dominique Ingram's case exemplifies broader issues surrounding intimate partner violence and the systemic gaps in preventing homicide-suicides. Statistical data from organizations like the Texas Council on Family Violence indicate that firearm-related intimate partner homicide-suicides constitute a significant portion of domestic violence fatalities. The pattern in this case, a male partner killing his female partner and subsequently committing suicide, aligns with these trends, suggesting that Stephanie's death was part of a larger, systemic issue that affects thousands of households annually. This case also highlights gaps in reporting and intervention. No public records indicate prior domestic disputes or law enforcement involvement, suggesting that many lethal domestic incidents occur without prior documentation or awareness. The absence of warning signs in public records demonstrates the challenge of early identification of at-risk relationships. Policy discussions following incidents of this nature often focus on enhanced monitoring of domestic situations, increased public education, and intervention protocols to reduce the likelihood of lethal outcomes. Firearm accessibility is a critical factor in intimate partner homicides. Research indicates that the presence of a firearm in a domestic setting significantly increases the risk of fatal outcomes. Stephanie Dominique Ingram's death reinforces the importance of policy measures aimed at controlling firearm access in high-risk domestic situations, as well as the need for preventive strategies including risk assessments, protective orders, and community-based support services. The case received attention primarily from local news outlets, including AOL News and the Star-Telegram, with brief national coverage through aggregated news sites. Reporting focused on the factual sequence of events: discovery of the bodies, the identification of the victims, and the presence of the infant. Local media coverage emphasized community impact and procedural details, whereas national platforms often presented abbreviated versions, summarizing the incident as a domestic tragedy. Media representation in this instance illustrates the challenge of balancing informative reporting with sensationalism. While headlines on aggregated platforms tended to highlight the murder-suicide aspect, detailed reporting was largely absent. There is no evidence of speculative coverage regarding motive, prior history, or psychological profiling beyond what could be inferred from statistical trends and typical patterns in homicide-suicide cases. Separating verified facts from speculation is critical in understanding this case without amplifying unverified narratives. Despite the reporting, key aspects of the case remain unresolved in the public domain. The precise motivation behind Thornton's actions is unknown. Public records provide no indication of prior abuse, argument escalation, or documented psychological distress. The presence of the infant at the scene raises questions regarding Thornton's intent, yet no information clarifies whether he had considered harming the child or left the infant unharmed intentionally. The limited public knowledge about homicide-suicide cases, especially those involving intimate partners, underscores a systemic challenge. Many victims' lives and circumstances remain largely invisible, with only the final act of violence recorded in media or legal databases. Questions about preventive measures, early warning signs, and potential interventions remain largely unanswered in cases like this. Stephanie Dominique Ingram's case demonstrates the patterns and risks inherent in intimate partner relationships where violence escalates unchecked. It emphasizes the necessity of recognizing potential warning signs, advocating for systemic interventions, and promoting policies that prevent domestic violence from resulting in lethal outcomes. Audiences are reminded to consider victims as individuals rather than statistics, and to support broader initiatives aimed at awareness, prevention, and protection of at-risk families. The life and death of Stephanie Dominique Ingram illustrate the fragility of trust in domestic relationships and the unseen dangers that can exist behind closed doors. The survival of the infant serves as a stark reminder of the human stakes involved and the potential for life to continue even after a lethal event. The case, while limited in publicly available details, acts as a call to examine domestic violence, homicide-suicide patterns, and the importance of preventative measures. Stephanie Dominique Ingram's story is not merely a tragic headline. It is a demonstration of the persistent, often invisible dangers within domestic environments and a reminder of the necessity for vigilance, awareness, and systemic reform. Communities, policymakers, and individuals must engage in efforts to identify at-risk situations, support vulnerable individuals, and prevent the recurrence of similar tragedies. The narrative leaves a lingering reflection. Even when limited information is available, the implications of such incidents extend beyond the immediate victims, affecting families, communities, and societal understanding of domestic violence. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions.